especially loving comic books, fandom,
Yeah.
movies, when you meet somebody that likes the same thing you do, there's a special bond that's created.
Oh, of course.
And like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
like, you can say it's beyond just a generic like, hey, oh, I like these movies or whatever, but like, oh yeah, if you know the deep cuts, and then you see somebody else that likes the deep cuts, you're like, friendship.
Yeah.
Oh, do we just become best friends? You
Yeah,
know?
it's like the Care Bears. It's
Yeah.
like,
I remember-
Cheers!
I'm trying to remember moments. I mean, I feel like we had already hit it off pretty well, but I feel like a key one was 2011.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably like, it was like New Year's 2000. So we'd known each other for literally like a year. And you're like, hey, me and my friend Steve, we're going to go get Korean barbecue for New Year's. And I was like, I've been wanting to get Korean barbecue I think it was like, I remember like 2008.
You'd never had it.
I never had it. And I
Yeah.
remember seeing a news thing in Maryland about some Northern Virginia Korean barbecue. And I was like, ooh, the beef tongue looks really good. I want to try that. And it had been on my list I remember it being like circa 2008. So about 3-4 years. And I was like, yes, I'm down. And it was like one of the best New Year's Eves ever.
Oh, it's so good. And it was snowing, so it was just like, crisp. We got really drunk off of soju.
Oh.
Came back. Yeah.
Was it Steve or you that started singing
Oh,
the
it was
song?
my song. Yeah, I had some
2011.
Yeah.
I had some 2011 song I was like making up on the fly.
Just kept
Oh,
like
yeah.
repeating.
That's
It was
great.
very funny.
Yeah, had to be there.
Had to be there.
The reason I bring that up because that's how me and Eduardo, how we knew each other,
Yeah.
met. Because I auditioned for his project El Padre, and then we were just talking and Robert Rodriguez and like throwing things out, and I could see like, okay, about Chow Yun Fat, about this cool stuff, and I knew about wrestling, and he knew about wrestling, so we're like, okay, this is connecting. And then I remember when I first met y'all at that house that you lived in off of USC.
The Purple House.
Yeah.
That's what we called it. Yeah.
Didn't it get demolished afterwards?
I don't
No,
know.
I think
Someone
it-
bought it.
yeah, and they
The owner
renovated it.
Okay.
changed hands. So you met Andrew before I moved out here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Briefly.
Okay.
Briefly.
Yeah.
We
I
like
couldn't remember.
passed by because when we were doing that project, we were all so busy running
Yeah.
around trying to get all our stuff done. So I remember meeting you.
Oh, was a Padre a USC thing?
Yes.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
his one of his.
Final things.
No,
right?
they called it 310. So
Okay.
it's basically the mid project, but it really is like your unique project you're supposed to do within 5 minutes with a lot of constraints. So yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that about Eduardo. We're going to sit here and talk about Eduardo.
Yes.
So orientation day.
Eduardo.
Yeah, orientation day. Eduardo and I meet,
Uh-huh.
right? And so I sit down in our group or whatever, and it was just me, him, and a few others of ours, and like, so I was like, man, so I just saw Sam Raimi. And I did.
Wow.
Sam Raimi was ahead of me with his son, checking his son in.
Wow. Okay.
And I was like, oh my God, that's Sam Raimi.
Uh-huh.
And so I was telling our group that, and I was like, yeah, I just saw Sam Raimi. And most everybody goes, who's Sam Raimi?
Oh wow.
And then I was like, this is the film table, right?
Yeah.
This is
You guys
this is
all
a
got
bad omen.
accepted, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was like,
Yeah.
what am I? And then Eduardo was like, did Evil Dead. He did. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And then so he had this like
Talking shit.
snarky, yeah, he had
Yeah.
this kind of snarky attitude or whatever. We go on our little tour or whatever, and you can. That's the same thing. It was like you can tell because he was like, he's like, yeah, like RoboCop, and I was like, what do you know about RoboCop? He's like, what do you know about RoboCop? And then I was like, oh yeah, well, and then we started like one-upping each other.
Yeah.
And you tell like that's that same thing you're talking about where it's like, oh my gosh, like yeah, finally like we're aligned on all those things,
Yeah.
those things that we love, like John Woo, Chow Yun Fat, like huge part of my childhood.
Oh yeah.
And Ringo Lam and like all the Hong Kong cinema was a huge part. Also like just weird subversive movies in cinema, like everything from like 80s and 90s. I was just like all about. RoboCop was the reason why I wanted to get into movies.
Okay.
Yeah, so like
So that's your gateway.
well, I mean, there's many gateways. There's
Okay.
two things. It was like one of them was Scream Greats, which was this Fangoria documentary.
Okay.
And I didn't know that it was a documentary when I got it. So, the short story of this is when I lived in Saudi Arabia, we would come back to the States, and out here there's a place called Ken Crane's. It was called Ken. I don't know if they're around. Ken Crane's Laserdisc Emporium.
Laserdisc. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't think they're
Laserdisc.
around anymore.
No, they're not Laserdisc.
It
right?
may have come and gone and come back.
Right. Yeah. So my dad would be like, "Hey, choose a couple movies or
Okay.
whatever." He would choose a couple movies, and I saw the cover of this, and I still have the VHS of this,
Uh-huh.
and the cover's amazing. It's got like what I didn't know is Tom Savini's face, and it's surrounded by monsters.
Okay.
And I was like, I gotta get this.
Yeah.
So I gave my dad the sales pitch. I was like, oh yeah, I've seen this movie. This is like, he's got, it hadn't seen it. Brought it back. I went all the way back to Saudi Arabia, played this thing, and it's a documentary. And I'm like, what is this? And it's
Okay.
a movie about making movies, special effects. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's a thing. 8 years old.
Right.
So we watched RoboCop one day, and we do this with a few other movies, but he paused it right on the point when he gets his arm blown up, right?
Uh-huh.
And on Laserdisc, it's crisp. So he
Right.
pauses it, and it's like crystal clear, and he's backtracking and forward tracking frame by frame.
Right.
And he's like, "How do you think they did this?" And I go, "What do you mean?" And we just started talking about it like that, and then it just solidified. Like, not only like movies are made, right? And it's made by really creative people it's magic, it's illusion.
Right.
And it's just like that, it just, those things in my brain, you can tell like they just, connected dots. And I was like, wanting to write stories and do all that stuff. And it was also at the time, it's really influential when you're like wanting to play, you're wanting to make things up and
Yeah.
things like that. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it was a huge part of it. Paul Verhoeven, there's just so much. So anyways, go back to, meeting Eduardo, it was
Yeah.
like breath of fresh air. Of course, we became like instant best friends, hanging
Uh-huh.
out, like, talking movies and stuff like that. And it became that same thing. And what's really weird is that you would think in LA there would be, and I'm sure there are, massive amounts of nerds.
Right.
It's hard to find.
Well, I will tell you, especially as an actor, the things I like and the conversation I like to have, a lot of actors don't like having those conversations.
That's bizarre.
Yeah, because either they are fans, but like I have a friend who's a working actor. He goes, "Sonny, you think about movies a little bit too deep," and I'm like, "What? That's the whole point of movies.
Yeah.
Is to talk about what do you think the director meant or the writer wanted, and how the story and all that." They're like, "It's just a movie, dude." I'm like, "No, it's not just a movie." I mean, granted, there's the popcorn films that are purposely designed that way, but there's other films that aren't.
Yeah.
That are supposed to make you think and make you wonder, okay, and like I just saw two movies that I literally left going, what the fuck? One was Men,
Oh,
the
I haven't
Alex
seen
Garland movie,
Yeah.
and the other one is Crimes of the Future.
Oh, both movies I
Yeah.
want to see.
And I just walked away going, I'm gonna have to watch YouTube videos to explain the movie to me because I don't get it.